Welcome to the Black Girl Burnout podcast. Kelley here, and I am back with a question for you. How do you know when it's time to let go of the path you're on? This is a question I think I've wrestled with personally, and I think a lot of people wrestle with when they feel this need to change or they're feeling like something is amiss. They're just not really clear about what to do. They know something isn't working, and they're pretty sure that the direction they're going in their lives is requiring some kind of change. It's also a question I've been thinking about a lot more to talk about because I look at the world around me and I see people who feel this energy, this need to change. And it's in direct reaction to the world around them. Things have gotten a lot harder. This year has been difficult for many people. And whether it's economically or socially or spiritually or familial, things going on in your family and relatives, there's just been a lot of pressure on people and a lot of need to kind of scramble to make quick changes to try to keep up. I see this a lot with social media. A lot of the content creators that I've followed or just watching them on my feed as they appear, they're all in the midst of changing content, trying different things. And while some of that feels organic and natural, everybody has to change. I know for myself, I've changed. A lot of it feels anxious. Like the feeling I get from it all is anxiety. This need to pivot to stay relevant, this need to pivot for numbers, this need to try to make at quarterly goals financially, if you're an entrepreneur. I see it across all the platforms, whether it's LinkedIn to TikTok and Instagram. And I know for myself, I've said that before in previous episodes, I've just kind of opted out of that, not in a delusional kind of, oh, everything's fine. I'll just keep what I'm doing and hope everything becomes magically perfect. It's not so much that. It's more so that I've chosen to opt out of chasing trends and looking at data numbers overly so, and hyper fixating on, for example, the success of Black Girl Burnout, because I just don't ultimately have a bunch of control over how successful this podcast is or isn't, how much money it makes or it doesn't. And instead of trying to make it super profitable, which I want it to be, I've shifted more to just making it enjoyable and it becoming the podcast I can live with versus the podcast that brings me accolades and income and allows me to be as expansive and as big as I'd like to be and what I dream Black Girl Burnout could be. Now just isn't the time. It just doesn't bring in enough money for that. I digress to say that there's a lot of this energy of the need to change and to do things differently. And I want to turn this back to you who's listening to this podcast and re ask the question, how do you know when it's time to let go of the path that you're on? And I understand there's a lot of reasons where we might feel that tension, we might feel that discomfort and that need, that desire, and yet ignore it. And sometimes that's because the path that we're on, we've invested so much into. Maybe you're pursuing a PhD in a topic you hate, or maybe you've been doing this work for years. Maybe you've been in a relationship for a long time, or you've had dynamics with people, family and friends, that it just feels disruptive and wrong to change it. The other tension is that you've made it work. Even if it's not satisfying or you feel this kind of call to change paths, you've been doing it for years so far. You've been putting up with dynamics so far. Why change it? I'm making it work. And even though you're feeling like you've made it work, you feel like you invested in something, you still have that underlying feeling that it's just not aligned. If that's how you're feeling right now, if you feel like the weight of the world is also pushing you toward making a change, if you feel like this isn't sustainable how I'm living, I want to offer the concept of the soft pivot again for you all. I want this episode to come for you because ultimately this episode isn't going to be about burnout collapse, like you just can't keep going anymore. If you keep on this path, you will you will suffer, or the devastation that comes when you have to make a forced change or a forced exit. I want this episode to be about choosing a softer, more honest shift, the bending and pivoting before you break. Because the truth is, sometimes the whisper to change comes long before the crisis ever happens. But will you listen to it? Will you hear your body telling you to change? The most important thing you can do is not ignore these moments. And we've all done it. We've all stayed in jobs, relationships, dynamics, roles in our lives that have not been aligned for some of us decades, and we stay. And it costs to hold on to an old or misaligned version of yourself. When you stay too long in a job, an identity, or relationship, and it no longer serves you, it creates a pain that I don't think we often talk about enough as women. For example, what about the pressure of being good at something that's now misaligned? I know this is true for myself. I, in the corporate world, was really good at what I did, and I did a lot of different things, and I was really good. And if you ask me about what I did in my job and what I do now, they couldn't be any more different. There are still threads of who I am and what I do day to day, to be sure. But the work was starting to feel less and less enjoyable and more misaligned. And a lot of it had to do with just the burnout culture of corporate America, that I was betraying myself every day by denying myself rest when I needed it, staying in toxic dynamics with my coworkers and bosses that were not meaningful and many times extremely abusive and destructive. But I stayed because I was good at it, and people were benefiting from the work I was doing. I was making an impact, and I allowed that to overshadow my own personal pain and abuse that I was experiencing over and over again. If you're like me, which is a lot of you listening, because you're probably a high achieving Black woman, we have been socialized for so long to push through instead of pivot. We are told you're good, keep going. Exposure means everything. A pat on the back is better than a raise. It doesn't matter if you're being mistreated. You're so good, just keep going. And when you are socialized to push through instead of pivot, you will betray yourself all day long and call it getting the bag, and call it getting the followers, and call it any number of things that are masking as achievement that really are self betrayal. And I also want to hold space for the fact that sometimes we're good at a thing that we loved and it's just not aligned anymore. And there is a grief in that. I know specifically for myself, when I left the prison system, I didn't realize that I broke my own heart leaving that job because I was good at it and I liked working with incarcerated folks. I did. I know that's not everybody's dream. I know that's not most people's dreams, but I genuinely liked the interactions I was having with the people that I was working with. I found joy there. And I cannot describe to you the level of grief I experienced when I was no longer able to do that work, when I had to change. And it was necessary, but it wasn't less painful because of that. And honestly, in my case, it was a complete crash out. So it was the most painful way I could have changed careers. And I want to offer this episode to stop that from happening to you and to give you permission to hear this, that you can love something and still need to leave it. And I know that can be hard, particularly when we talk about relationships with people. You can still love a person and need to alter or change the relationship. And yes, that can even include leaving it. For a long time in the work that I did, I knew I should have left. I knew I need to go, I need to change, and though many times in my career it's felt like, "Really? You shouldn't do it now, you're at the top of your game." It has been the right time every single time when I've honored what I felt, even if it didn't make sense to others on paper. When I have said a person is misaligned with me for a relationship, other people have been like, "Huh? That person seems great." But I have known within myself that even if that person and I made a lot of sense on paper, it wasn't the relationship for me to continue to be a part of or to pursue or to move further down the road. But I want to honor that there can be grief associated with making pivots, even soft ones. But I will promise you that the soft pivot feels so much better than waiting to the inevitable crash out that a lot of people have and experience all too often at their own expense and to their own detriment. And here's why I think the soft pivot is less painful. Some real practical reasons. One, it's not impulsive or dramatic. Trust me, the way I quit my job at the prison system was, impulsive and, extra drama, the most dramatic I've probably ever been in my life. It was not a good look. Let's be real. One of the biggest sources of burnout for Black women is money, whether it's debt, divorce, home buying, investing, or just trying to make it to the next paycheck. Financial stress is real and it's exhausting. But here's something that can help: the Savvy Ladies Helpline. It's free. Yes, really free. You get 55 minutes with a certified financial expert, no strings, no judgment, just real answers to your real money questions. Want to build wealth, prep for retirement, figure out how to invest, or navigate money after a breakup? They've got you. Savvy Ladies is on a mission to make financial education accessible to all women, and the helpline is a game changer. So if money is stealing your peace, I invite you to take one powerful step toward financial freedom. Visit savvyladies.org and book your free session today. You don't have to struggle alone. You can opt out of burnout and into clarity, confidence, and peace with your money. If I had chosen the soft pivot, I could have left a lot sooner and with a lot more grace than I ended up leaving. The soft pivot is also rooted in clarity and self trust. When you take the time to actually know what's aligned and what's not, and when you do the work to trust what you're feeling and the data around you, I always say, trust your feelings, lean on them, lean on your intuition, and then gather data that supports it, gather data around it. Ask yourself thoughtful questions to really get to the heart of what is going on to make sure that it's the right move. And when you do that, you feel so much better. You feel so much more confident about the decision that you're making. When you do a soft pivot, you also start this gentle journey to disconnecting from other people's expectations. You take the time to kind of let go of the expectations. You role play how people might react in the moment. And you feel a lot more disconnected from the expectations of others. And the great thing about the soft pivot above all is that it's often invisible at first, but it feels seismic internally. It feels huge inside of yourself. All of the soft pivots I have made have been just like that. No one noticed it, but inside of myself, I felt so excited about the changes. And other times I had a little bit of grief about it. I'm in the midst of one right now. It's not going to be very visible to just about anybody else. But inside of me, I'm excited about the changes I am making and the new versions of myself I am discovering and recovering, as this year has been all about the rebuild for me. So, how do you know when you need to pivot? and when you need to do it, most importantly, softly. Here's a couple of ideas and examples. You feel heavy after doing something that used to light you up. You are fantasizing about quitting or disappearing or starting over. Maybe you feel like you're performing instead of living. This one I see a lot. If you are experiencing all those things, it might be time for a pivot. But I want you to keep in mind that pivoting doesn't mean you failed. It just means you've outgrown the version of yourself that fits that life. So, how do we do it? How do we begin the soft pivot? What does that look like? It starts with all this inner work of change, right? We're changing within ourselves. And there is this moment between the knowing and the action, right? This moment where you're like, who will I be if I don't do this thing anymore, have this occupation? I'm not identified with this role. The moment where self doubt creeps in, or that moment where you feel like, I worked so hard to be in this role, doing this work, in this relationship, having this title, whatever that is. There's this moment where your identity is truly shaken. And then there's always that sense of urgency where we want to skip right past the work of rebuilding and reflection and the stillness that's required to do that and just like jump to the next thing. I've also been guilty of that many a times. And then you'll find yourself in a new job or a new relationship or a new role, and you'll be like, this is very familiar because you felt the need to change, but you didn't let stillness enter the picture. You didn't mindfully think about it, and you just jump to the next. So instead, think about getting still before you get strategic. This one was real hard for me because I'm literally a strategic planner. That's one of my best skills. And I love a strategy and a roadmap and an idea and a 3-point plan. Oh, don't threaten me with a good time. I love that kind of stuff. But I had to learn that my best pivots that I made all came from moments of journaling and calmness and stillness and thinking, not strategizing, feeling, not strategizing. Let your body weigh in. How does it feel when you're daydreaming about this new life? Do you feel expansive or this soft pivot? Does it make you light up? Is it expansive? Or does it make you feel trapped or tense? And I want to offer one last thing when you begin this work of interchange. You don't need to have all the answers and a full plan to take a small step. You don't need to have all the answers to set a boundary at your job or to readdress a boundary in a relationship or a dynamic. You don't need to know how it's all going to turn out right away to take a small step. And when you realize that, when you really think about the smallest step you can take to change X, it makes things feel much more manageable and you start that soft pivot thoughtfully and more restoratively so you're not at war with yourself. Now, again, changing paths may feel like a loss, especially when people do not understand the changes you're making. There are a lot of people who do not understand my podcast strategy. It doesn't make no sense. It doesn't make any sense as a business model. It's not a good business model strategy. Let me be honest. It's not. And there are things that I have not done that are absolutely not the best idea when it comes to podcast expansion and growth. But they're the right changes for me. This is the right path for me to be on right now. Because what I realized is being misaligned, staying in that framework of hustling for listeners and hustling for people to want to support the podcast, it was costing a lot. a lot of my time, a lot of my energy, the way I was feeling about stepping in front of the mic. And so I want to remind you that, yes, changing paths and softly pivoting may feel like grief. It may feel like a loss, but staying misaligned comes at a bigger cost. And if you're truly being honest with yourself, you know that to be true. The real success and win in life is a life that's full of peace, alignment, and self respect. So it's okay to need slowness. It's okay to redefine yourself. And I want you to take one step today, one small one, and ask yourself, what am I holding on to that no longer feels true about myself? Just write it down without judgment. Don't overthink it. Say it out loud if you're on a walk or on your commute in. What are you holding on to that no longer feels true? And then, if you feel brave, you can let us know via our comments in TikTok or Instagram, DM us, or even Substack. You can DM me there. What are you outgrowing right now? I'd love to know. Tell me. In conclusion, you don't have to blow everything up. You don't have to know the end for a shift. You just have to honor that soft whisper inside of yourself that says, it's time. Soft pivoting will give you the peace, the self-respect, and the alignment you deserve. I want to close by telling you to take a deep breath with me and realize that you are choosing change, even if it begins in silence. And you're doing this in a way that will bring more softness, more ease, and more joy into your life. So that's it for today's episode. You know how to support the podcast. Your reviews, first of all, have been giving me life. Thank you so much for crossing our first goal of getting 600 Apple reviews. I'm so grateful. I'm setting another one. I want us to get to 700 eventually. So if you have not, and you're listening to this on Apple, if you've not hit the 5 stars yet, please, I beg, just hit the 5 stars. If you are one of the amazing, incredible listeners on Spotify, where we are just doing so great over there, please consider dropping 5 stars there as well. Sharing, subscribing, and reviewing the podcast literally helps the financial picture of it. And it's the easiest free thing you can do if you listen to this podcast repeatedly. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Substack, all under the same name, at Black Girl Burnout. I promise you get a different experience on all of those platforms as we try to bring something different to each one, me and my team. Substack is my baby. I run entirely all of the Substack, and it is a place where I go deeper on these themes. If you like Tumblr, or you like blogging, or you like digital magazines, Substack, Black Girl Burnout, it's calling you. It's for you. And if you want to support the podcast, I have a subscription model tied to Substack for $8 a month. It helps support everything I'm doing right now in the Black Girl Burnout universe. And hopefully when the time is right, ways to further expand it. Okay. Until next week, take care of yourself, take care of each other, rest well, and pivot softly.